This is an interview with Andrea Lawrence from Spelman College, conducted by Barbara Boucher Owens. This interview is being recorded on the 6th of November, 2007, at Bellevue, Washington, USA. It's part of the Computer Educators Oral History Project. Did we give and pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did.
Good. All right, we're going to start way back when.
Okay.
All right? Now, did your parents have college degrees?
Yes, they did. In fact, my parents finished college after I was born. My dad was on the Veterans Bill after World War II, and we all went to college together. Only I went to nursery school.
Well, were either of your parents in computing-related fields such as mathematics, science, or engineering?
No, my mom was an English major, and my dad started out to be a doctor of biology and ended up as a teacher. So ended up in psychology.
Okay, were you a good student?
Oh, I was a great student. I almost had to be. My mother was working at Spelman College by the time I got old enough to really worry about grades, and she wasn't going to stand for me having anything less than A's, so I knew not to bring home anything that didn't look like that.
Well, did you take courses in math and science that prepared you for college and your study of math, science, or computing?
I really just took the standard courses, nothing special. I went to a small school that was largely a boarding school. I was a day student, and there really wasn't a lot of choice. I took as much math as we had, which wasn't much. Didn't get past geometry. So when I got to college, my decision to major in math was not predicated on that. It's just that I had always liked math.
Well, tell us a little bit more about this boarding school that you went to. Were the teachers take a good interest in you and make you feel confident? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was an interesting school. It was a Methodist school, and really sort of an outreach project. At that period, there were a number of schools, places in the South where there were no high schools for the black students. Else they had to ride miles and miles and miles to go to a consolidated school because of segregation. So these schools were started around the South to provide education, high school educations for black students. Mine was a girls' school, and the teachers was very small. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody was convinced that she was going to do great things. We all just knew we were going off to college and we were going to have great careers because our teachers were so convinced we were going to.
And you did.
We did.
Well, did you have brothers and sisters who went to college and a professional career?
I'm an only child, so no, it's just me. So all the hopes pinned on my shoulders.
All right. Well, you had said that you only went as far as geometry, but was there a teacher or someone else in your early life who inspired you to pursue a career in math?
It actually was my grandmother. My grandmother was a 6th grade teacher, in fact, taught me in the 6th grade, and she really loved math and always wanted to go further in math, so she kind of pushed me to excel in mathematics. So it seemed natural to go ahead and major in it when I got to college. She made it fun. She would give me things to do, puzzles to solve, exercises to do, and it just got me interested in seeing what could I do with math.
Interesting. Well, you clearly went on to college. Why did you choose your undergraduate institution?
Well, it was chosen for me. Actually, I had the good fortune of being a presidential scholar under Lyndon Johnson, one of the first presidential scholars, and there were 2 of us from each state chosen to go to Washington to meet the president. And at that meeting, there were a number of representatives from colleges, and they said, wherever you want to go, you can go, we'll find money. And my grandfather said, oh no, she's going to Spelman. So I packed my suitcase and went to Spelman. I really wanted to go to Oberlin because I had read about it, and it seemed like just a great place with a lot of intellectual ideas and a lot of new ideas. But I really liked Spelman once I got there. I think he knew better than I did where I needed to be.
And did you know when you started Spelman that you wanted to major in math?
Yes, I did. From the first, I knew I was going to be a math major. There was never any doubt in my mind. My doubt was what I was going to minor in. And in fact, I couldn't make up my mind. So I was an English minor and a biology minor. And I thought I was going to put all that together and become a science writer. So I was going to have the 2 science exposures and the writing, English for the writing. And my goal was to be a science writer.
Do you ever do any science writing now?
I really don't. Except reports, I suppose. But I just never got back to that. But that was where I was sort of planning my career.
Well, what kind of support did you have at Spelman? Were there other women studying mathematics? Were there particular professors that encouraged you? What was it like for you studying at Spelman?
Well, Spelman I know it's an all-women's college as well. So I went from a girls' high school to a women's college. And the thing about being in that kind of environment is that nobody thinks you're odd if you want to do well in math or science. Nobody thinks you're unfeminine or anything. They just encourage you. So there were a number of us who went through school together as math majors. Some of them have since become, well, actually, a couple of them went to medical school, actually, with the math major and added biology to it. A couple of them I have heard about other places. Some more went on to get the higher degrees. But it was never any question that we could not do it, that we would do it. Our teachers were very encouraging. One in particular, Dr. Etta Faulkner, was one of the first black women to get her PhD in mathematics. And she was studying for her PhD while I was at Spelman. She taught me. And I remember that she gave me one of the 2 B's I ever got in college. And my sister got married the end of my sophomore year. And
your sister got married, but you
my stepsister. I had a
stepsister.
My stepsister.
You said you didn't have siblings.
Right, I'm sorry. I didn't get my stepsister until I was 17, so I tend to remember. But yes, we were both at Spelman, and she got married. And my mother was not in favor of her getting married at the end of her freshman year. So she gave us a budget and a book on how to plan a wedding, and told us if we insist on doing this, we should do it ourselves. Well, we did, but in the process, I didn't study for my final in calculus. So when I went to take the test, I did something I had never done. I stayed up all night to try to study. My mind went blank. I don't know what I put on that paper. So I went in afterwards to talk to Dr. Faulkner, and she says, "How could you blow this A average?" She says, "I'm going to have to give you this B." She said, "It's going to hurt me to do it." She said, so she wrote it down. And she said, "What happened?" And I told her, I said, "Well, my sister got married." She says, "Well, I hope you don't have any more sisters."
So did she or others encourage you to go on for further education when you finished Spelman?
Well, when I didn't finish Spelman, actually. I dropped out and got married and finished Purdue later. But when I came back to Georgia to pursue my master's in computer science, not mathematics, Dr. Faulkner found me again, took me under her wing, encouraged me, hired me as a graduate teaching assistant at Spelman while I went to Atlanta University, and got me a job at Spelman full-time when I finished my master's.
Well, let's back up and find out how you finally got your college degree. When did you leave Spelman, and where did you go?
Oh, I dropped out because I was in love, and we wanted to get married, and at that time, Spelman had a rule that you had to give them a year's notice if you wanted to stay in school and get married. and we didn't want to wait a year. So I dropped out, and we got married. He finished Morehouse, which is the male school across the street from Spelman. And then we went off to West Lafayette, Indiana for him to pursue his master's at Purdue. Well, since I was living on a college campus, I decided I might as well finish school. So I enrolled. Purdue was very helpful. Went to school for in-state rates, very inexpensive. And I finished at the same day that he finished his master's. I got my bachelor's in mathematics. And I was going to go on for my PhD in math. Had been admitted, had this fellowship. But he decided he was not going to stay and pursue the PhD as he had planned. And he was going to go to work in Cincinnati, Ohio. Well, it seemed like a bit of a commute. And if you think 1970 was not the time when women typically thought, well, I'll go to school in this state and my husband will be in that state. So I followed him to Cincinnati and didn't go back to school for several years and 2 babies. Eventually I did go back to get my teaching certificate.
In Cincinnati? In
Cincinnati. So I went to University of Cincinnati and did graduate courses to get my teaching certificate and taught high school math for a while. And
did you enjoy that experience of teaching high school math?
Well, I did, not at first. At first it was really sort of just a challenge. I was a substitute teacher, what they call in Georgia a supply teacher. And I was going to all these different schools. You had to find the school. You had to learn the rules. But then I was recommended to work in a magnet program, a college prep school. It was public school, but still it was a magnet college prep, and that was just wonderful because the students there knew if they didn't do well, they were going to have to go back to their neighborhood schools. They were about business. Everybody was about business. It was great. So I really discovered I liked teaching, that I really enjoyed seeing the students, that feeling that comes over the students when they know they've gotten that idea. And I said, well, this is what I want to do.
So somehow you ended up back in Atlanta. Do you want to tell us about that switch? You're a high school teacher. You have 2 children?
3, actually.
3 by this.
And, well, my husband and I guess came to I guess that's a midlife crisis or whatever, but we decided to part ways, and I went back to Atlanta where my mom was and took the girls. And I said, well, if I'm going to do well, I'm going to need a master's degree because I'm going to need to be making decent money with these children. So I went over to Atlanta University, which is, again, across the street from Spelman and Morehouse, and talked to them about getting into a graduate program. But first I was thinking about getting a Master's of Arts in Teaching. And the chair of the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science persuaded me that I really should get a master's in a subject area, computer science or mathematics. When I started thinking about how long it had been since I did a proof, I decided to go for the computer science. And I had done some computer science courses in the process of finishing my degree at Purdue, in the process of getting a teaching certificate. I had done some computer-related courses. And we had gotten Radio Shack computer, and I had played around with that. So I thought, well, I think I'd like to do computer science. And the rest is sort of history, as they say.
So tell us a little bit more about that master's and
that was kind of interesting experience because here I am. I've just moved from Cincinnati to Georgia and run around to try to find 3 different schools for 3 different daughters and get myself situated. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? You know, it's been a while since I had been in school full time. I took courses for my teaching certificate part-time, so it's a whole different experience trying to be in school part-time, trying to work enough. I used to joke that I had 3 part-time jobs, one for each daughter. And really, wasn't serious when I was a graduate teaching assistant. I taught pre-calculus at Spelman, going to school at Atlanta University. and I worked in the math lab. Then I had a part-time job working in the med school library, because there's a medical school also located with all these colleges. And if that weren't enough, periodically I taught basic to children on the apples at Spelman in the continuing education program. But the job that really saved me was the library job, because it gave me about 15 hours a week uninterrupted study time. If I was at home, I had to do 3 sets of homework before I did mine. But the girls didn't mind if I was off working and I wasn't helping them. They understood that. And we lived with my parents, so they were able to feel supported and not feel neglected, and I was able to get some homework done.
Were you doing any research? I mean, I don't see how you would have had time, but...
Nothing except the research I did for my thesis, my master's thesis, which was actually a study of criterion, a tool for helping students get ready for a criterion reference test that they had just put into place in Georgia. So I worked with a local school, and developed software for them to help them drill the students to get ready for the test.
Were there particular people in that experience that mentored you?
Well, I was still interacting with Dr. Faulkner, who was right there, and also Dr. Benjamin Martin, the chair of the department, was very much a mentor for me. He was the one that found me the job at the med school. When I came there and said, well, you know, I need money. I want to go to school, but I need money. And he said, well, are you serious? He said, all right. He said, well, I have a job for you. His wife ran the library at the medical school. So he said, come on. So he walked me over to the medical school. I had no idea where we were going. The medical school was new since I went to Spelman, so I had no idea where we were going. He says, okay, she wants a job. And so she put me to work. I said, okay, fine. And he told me later that he did that to see if I was serious. He said a lot of people would have said, oh, no, I don't want a job like that. I go sit behind this desk and just check out books. And he said, well, once he figured I was serious, then he got me the graduate teaching assistantship, and he was very helpful. But it was my little test to try to see if I was about business.
Well, in this period of time, were there other people that you were friends with going through the program? Did you have support from colleagues, other students?
I made friends, but in terms of that, not so much. It was really hard for me to find time to work with other people. By the time I did the job and the kids and the classes, my best help at that point was my mom, who had decided to get interested in computers from a user perspective, and in fact went out and bought an Osborne. Now, you may not remember the Osborne, but it was supposed to be portable, but it was more like luggable. And it had a little about 5-inch screen. And she went out and bought this ostensibly because she wanted to try the word process on it. But I later figured out that she did it so that I could do some of my homework without having to go to the lab. Because we had the program, I could do some of my programs on there, at least the preliminaries. And my database stuff I could do on there. And that was why she went and got it. But she was really supportive. She would encourage me when I would get down. She would tell me, pick up that book, you're sleeping on it. After I had helped each child successfully with homework and thought I was going to do mine. So she was really there for me. I couldn't have done it without her.
Well, you finished up your master's thesis.
And went to work teaching at Spelman full-time, only now computer science instead of math. And Spelman was just beginning its full computer science major at that time. Before that, there was a joint program among the Atlanta University Center schools.
The Atlanta University, what kind of school?
The Atlanta University Center, which is Spelman, Morehouse, Clark, Atlanta University, the theological seminary, and the medical school, and I've missed one, Lawrence Brown. So the undergraduate schools had a joint computer science major. First year they stayed at home. They took intro, Fortran I think it was at that time. And after that they went to the joint program, which met at the library. We have a joint library. But Spelman was finding that there was a boom. This was the mid to late 80s. There was a sort of a boom in computer science. So the girls were finding it difficult to have to try to wait in line for their turn at the joint machines. There were cases of the girls being bodily lifted out of the line by the fellows who wanted to get to. Mm-hmm. And also they felt like they didn't have good control over what kind of education the girls were getting. So it was decided to start our own program. So we were the first of the AU Center schools to get our own 4-year degree. So I got to be on the ground floor of that. I helped write curriculum. I helped do some of the courses. That's back when we had the CS1, CS2, CS3 to 7 courses. And I got to help write syllabi and plan the curriculum. So it was an exciting time to be in computer science.
And then?
And then Dr. Faulkner showed up again and said, well, you know you can't stay in college teaching if you don't have your PhD. She says, like a driver's license, you got to go get it. And I'm like, all these children, you know. And they were getting ready to go to college, too. So, you know, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And she says, so she goes away and leaves me alone. After a while, she comes back and she says, I put you in for this fellowship. You need to start applying to schools. So sure enough, she got me a fellowship, an IBM UNCF fellowship, and I decided to try to find a school. Well, I thought about North Carolina because I'm from there, but I couldn't find a program in North Carolina that had graduated a black person in computer science. I looked. I thought about Georgia Tech, and I was a little dubious about going there. And it was the only PhD program in the state of Georgia. And I talked to some people from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and also Chattanooga, and they were very encouraging. One of them offered me this fellowship. They had a house I could rent for the kids. So I'm thinking about moving. And my girls had a family meeting without me. And they came to me and they said, well, Mom, we know you want to go get your degree and we're going to support you. You know, we're going to do our work and, you know, so you can do yours. But we have a condition. You got to go to Tech because we're not moving. So I got in my car, drove over to Tech and applied. And as it turned out, that worked out well. It was a bit of a challenge. Georgia Tech was a school that was traditionally male, traditionally white. So I sort of felt like I was too old, the wrong color, the wrong age to be going there. There was nobody that looked like me. Very few women in the program. There were maybe 110 students and maybe 8 of them were female in the PhD program when I went. And most of them were in their 20s. And I had a college-age daughter, so we obviously wasn't in my 20s. And it was kind of difficult in the sense that you hear people talking about the isolation, about how people don't want to form study groups with you. I would end up doing projects by myself because I couldn't get a partner. And there were a couple of times when I thought, you know, I don't really want to do this. I can go back to high school. I know how to do that. But I stuck it out. I had a friend who encouraged me. And
at Tech?
No, actually, no. Not that I didn't have some people at Tech who were supportive. I don't want to get the impression that nobody was. the fellow who was in charge of the program at the time I went in was actually in an acting capacity. And I had gone over and taken a couple of courses as a non-degree student. And Tech got a new president, Creasine, became president. And he gave a speech about how Tech was going to increase diversity and become one of the leading producers of minority students, graduates. So they called me up and they said, what would it take to get you to come full time? We have a fellowship for, I don't know, I think $14,000 or something. And I said, I can't pay a mortgage and feed 3 children on $14,000, even in 1988. So, but he was very supportive and stood up for me. Some of the professors didn't believe that I could know anything, having gone to Atlanta University, which was a black school. And they wanted me to go back and take courses. They didn't want to let me into their courses. They wanted me to go back and repeat undergraduate level courses and to take things that I just wouldn't have time and energy to take again. I remember one of them set me down. He wanted to know the name of my textbook. He wanted to know this and that. And the ironic thing about it was that the particular course he was talking about, I had taken at Tech. And he still didn't want to accept that I knew enough to go into his course. So this guy, and I really can't remember his name. He's passed away since. But he stood up for me. When the advisor wouldn't sign me in the courses, he would override. And he said, well, let's just see how she does, you know. And I was able to do them. So he was a big help. Peter Freeman became dean of the College of Computing, and he was very supportive and helpful. My advisor was good in that he helped me figure out how to apply my interest in teaching and education to computer science and human-computer interaction. And Albert Barr. So he was helpful in that. And my office mate, Jeanette Allen, was really a support. Now, the first couple of years I was over there, I didn't know her. But when I went full-time, I met her, and she had the same advisor in a similar area of interest, and we were able to take courses together. When we did our minor, she was ahead of me in the other courses, so I wasn't in those with her, but we did a minor together. Tech requires you to take 6 courses from another discipline as a minor. So we made up a minor. We built a minor with psychology and industrial engineering, statistics kinds of courses, an experimental kind of minor. So we took psychology courses and statistics, and it was so funny because she really wasn't very good at math. So we were taking these statistics courses and advanced statistics courses, 6,000 level statistics courses. And the guy refers to something, and both of us look completely blank. We're like, deer in the headlights. And he stops and he says, well, you know about this and so, don't you? And he said, no. And then he finally says to her, he asked something else, and finally he says to Jeanette, well, you've heard of calculus, haven't you? So we go to his office afterwards, and we said, well, you know, should we drop? Should we go back and take a prerequisite course? And he kind of looks at us and shakes his head and goes, you made it this far. You might as well finish stuff. But he did give us an extra book to go through, and we made it through. And it was so funny because we took another course from him. A course that's known over there as Design of Messy Data. That's not the real name. But we did a project in that course for him that led to a journal publication. So he was very supportive, even though he was outside our discipline. And even though we thought he was going to have to go and take blood pressure medicine after dealing with us.
Well, did you get into research for your degree, and did you enjoy research?
I did. I really enjoyed it. I said, I was in human-computer interaction, so I did experiments on using animated algorithms to teach computer science, so animations. So I had to develop animations, develop tests on the animations, and I was able to use some of the students at Georgia State and some of the students at Georgia Tech for my subjects. Georgia Tech has this nice thing where psychology students have to be in experiments. So you don't have to try to bribe them to come and be in your experiment because they need an experimental credit. So it made it easy to get them to come in and try my animations. And it took me a while to kind of get to that. At first I thought I wanted to write an intelligent tutoring system. And one of my committee members, John Stasko, was doing animations. And he said he would be really interested to see if they really helped. And everybody said, ooh, ah, when they saw them. But he wasn't sure if they would really help. So I took that as my project, and it was very interesting. I got to figure out all the nuances of what do you do to animations. Is it color that matters? Is it how fast they move? Is it how you represent the data? And what I really found out was that it's involvement. If the student isn't involved, it's just like watching a cartoon or something. It doesn't really go in. If they don't do something, if they don't put in the data, if they don't manipulate it some kind of way, it doesn't seem to stick. So that was fun, and I had some great people on my committee, and they were really helpful. So I was very lucky that way. They were very good. One of the guys read everything. If I couldn't find my advisor, he would take those. When the drafts got to be 100 pages of dissertation, he would still take it home over the weekend and read it and bring it back with suggestions. So that was great. I was able to get that kind of support.
So you finished your PhD?
I did. Dr. Faulkner pushing me every inch of the way.
Here she is again.
She was right there. And went back to Spelman, and
so were you on leave when you were going full-time?
I was on leave. I was on leave for 3 years. The first 2 years I had the IBM fellowship, and the third year I had some other funding, so I was able to stay. But at the end of the third year, they told me I had to be back in the classroom. I give up my job. Well, I couldn't afford to give up my job because I had a child going to school on the free tuition for employees. So I knew I had to go back in the classroom, and I wasn't quite finished. So the fourth year, I was going to school full-time and teaching. And Dr. Martin, by now, had left Atlanta University and was at Spelman. So he was my chair. So he was very helpful in helping me develop a schedule that would let me do that. A teaching schedule that would let me have full days at Tech. And I found out one thing that was sort of a trick, that I had, if my advisor didn't see me, he didn't think I was working. So I was there all day, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So what I found out I had to do was, along about Wednesday, I would leave work, drive to Tech, put my coat in the office, go by, let him see me wandering back and forth carrying something, speak to him, and go home. And after that happened, he said, yes, I'm glad to see you're really working now. Okay.
Bring your coat.
But I had to put the coat on first because it had to look like I was there. So it was interesting how that half an hour really made a difference to him because he felt like he was seeing me every day. But that was a bad year. I was glad to get to the end of that year. But it all worked out. I got out, got the degree, went back to teaching full time. And I really have enjoyed my time at Spelman. It's been great. I've been chair for a good part of the time, and in that sense have gotten to shape the curriculum and shape the department, and that's been very satisfying.
Well, can you share with us your teaching philosophy, and has it changed over the years?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think my teaching philosophy basically is to try to help the students find out how to learn. So what I really am about trying to do is showing them enough so they can go from there later when they don't have me. And I think the other piece of my philosophy is that I should make an effort for them to understand me. That is, if I were to give a test and everybody was unable to do something, or even the majority, I would say that was my fault. Because if the good students can't get it, then I'm not putting it across. So I always measure my success as a teacher by their success as students. And I don't think that's changed much. I think I've always been inclined to think that the measure of a good teacher is whether the students are really learning.
What courses have been your favorite to teach, and why were they your favorites?
I really like to teach intro programming. And I like programming languages, and I like human-computer interaction, but my favorite is intro programming because it's such a joy to see when they get that sense of mastery that I can do it. To go from your basic hello world to a complicated combination and then come in and say, it works. That makes me really feel good.
Yeah.
So I like that course.
Do you have a particular story to relate about any particular student or classes?
Oh, I think that one of the things I've had about is that many of my students have almost become like daughters. And they've consulted me and come in and asked for my advice. But one of my favorite students, who actually went to MIT from Spelman, came in to me one day and she said, oh, I just don't know. I've been working on this project. She was doing an independent study with me. And it's just not working, this and that. So I was trying to write her a reference, and I said, well, I'm writing down about how you've done all this research. She said, well, I haven't done any research. It doesn't work. So we had to have a long talk about what research really was. The research was finding out that, no, this doesn't work, and why. So she, and I've been very close to several of my students. I get invited to weddings. I get baby pictures in the mail. The funniest one was, though, when I had to teach my niece. Actually, my ex-husband's niece, I should say. But that doesn't matter at this point. By that time, she was my niece. So she came to Spelman, and it's a small department. I had to teach her. You know, everybody has to teach everybody. And it's very funny because her dad is a college teacher in math, and other mathematicians know him. So they would do stuff like call me up and say, well, you know, I had a student who's not doing such and such. They wouldn't call any names. And I knew they were telling about her. And then at one time, she was in my class, and we fell out. I said, come on, we're going in my office. We had a long talk. I said, look, I may be your aunt, and I may love you dearly, but you're about to earn a D. And I'm going to give it to you. I said, I'm going to be very sad to give it to you, and I'm going to call your mom and dad up and explain why you got it. I said, but you're going to get it. So she left my office after she wept on me. And you know, that girl didn't turn anything in below a 95 for the rest of the semester. And I said, you could have done that all along. But she left Spelman, went to Auburn, and where she had a 4.0 for her master's. So, when she graduated from Spelman. And I said, now, you could have done that at Spelman. But she now has a PhD in computer science.
Oh.
So, she's one of my success stories.
Good. We're going to shift gears a bit and talk about professional organizations. What kind of professional organizations have you belonged to? Computing or research or computing education? What kind of organizations?
Well, I've been very active, not active in the sense of committees, but I'm 6C. I'll go to the conference every year. Get very interested in what goes on there. I've also have stayed part of the Mathematical Association of America because when I was teaching math at Spelman back when I first went, they gave me a membership, and I kept that up. I still go to workshops and conferences in math. Math is such a foundation of computer science that I kept that interest. And I'm also the outgoing president of a minority computer science organization called ADMI, ADMI, which has a very unwieldy title, Association of Departments of Computer Science and Computer Engineering in Minority Institutions. That's why we abbreviate it. But this organization is designed to help deal with some of the problems we have in some of our minority institutions. We have Hispanic serving Native American and HBCUs as members, mostly HBCUs. We have an annual symposium where students present research and are exposed to opportunities in research and careers in grad school. And I have a student who attended one of those graduate school sessions who has since credited me publicly with being the one who inspired him to go and get his PhD. And he said he had never seen a black person with a PhD in computer science. He was finishing his master's. He was thinking about a PhD and thinking about, no, I don't want to do this. This isn't for me. And he came to our workshop and decided, well, yes, he would stay and finish school. And he's now a faculty member at Auburn University. Juan Gilbert is his name. He writes a column for IEEE, for computer, I believe. And he's IEEE board or fellow. And so I'm thinking, okay. And then I have my niece who went through the admin organization presenting, some other students. So we're thinking that this encouragement is showing them that this is what you can do is a very important, even from a smaller school, from a minority serving institution, that you can use it as a springboard to great things. It's a very important thing our organization can do.
Have these professional organizations affected your career?
You know, actually speaking, I don't know that they really have affected except that they've kept me engaged and excited about my profession. When I go to 6C and find out new things people are doing, when I interact with my colleagues, and when I work at admin and see the students succeed, I think that brings me back refreshed, renewed, with new ideas, and keeps me from falling into a rut and having things become stale. So, in that sense, yes, they very much have.
This is sort of another tact on the same thing, but what role has supervising undergraduate students played in your career?
Well, Spelman is a small undergraduate liberal arts college, and you often would think there's no research. But in fact, one of the things that we have done in our sciences is to stress the idea of undergraduate research, that we want For instance, in computer science, our goal is that at least half of the students should do some undergraduate research before they graduate. And we hope for 2/3, but at least half. That's one of our objectives. So every year, just about, I've had 1 or 2 or 3 students doing some kind of project. And we had take them all over the place to present. They've been to NCUR, they've been to the ACM regionals, they've been to other national present organization conferences, as well as things like ADME. And I think that really keeps me interested in new things. For instance, I had 2 students who wanted to know about bioinformatics. Well, I didn't know any more about bioinformatics than they did. So we got 3 textbooks and found a faculty member who did know something about it. And we got to work. It was really very interesting. We learned about how string matching algorithms that we had learned in the algorithms course could be used on databases to find out about gene similarities. So it's something I never would have done if they hadn't wanted to do it. So I think working with students keeps me exploring new ideas, looking into new things. My latest is I'm learning about ice sheets in Antarctica. We're going to be analyzing data from the sensors that measure the thickness of the ice in Antarctica. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get to go to Antarctica on a field trip. Some of the scientists in the project are going to go. I'm not sure I'm going. In fact, my daughter expressly forbade me to go, but I'm really excited about this. It's a whole new realm of study. And my idea is to apply what I know about HCI to make the data more meaningful. So I have a student who's a biology major, I have a math major, and 2 computer science majors. And the biology student wants to work on how, if the ice really is melting, this may affect the biosphere. The mathematics major is interested in analyzing. The computer science major is also looking at how we're going to do algorithms to analyze the data. So that's my latest project, and I never would have thought of it.
Wow.
So I guess having undergraduates around keeps you thinking.
Well, have you spent time volunteering your professional service, and has this affected your career?
I guess I do spend a good bit of time. I do things. Go to high schools and whatnot and speak and do career presentations. I worked on conferences. I've read reviews. I do the standard. I read proposals for NSF and NASA. So I guess I do spend a good bit of time doing that. I think that's been really good in the sense that it has kept me connected with different ways different people are doing things. You know, you can be in your school and your things are going fine and you don't look out. I think being involved with other organizations and groups has helped me keep a fresh eye on what I'm doing back at Spelman. So, in that sense, yes, it has.
I think you've answered this, that you've found ways to serve as a mentor. You keep in touch with people. Do you have any particular mentoring stories you'd like to?
Well, I did kind of answer it because I told you about one and my niece. Mm-hmm. But I guess that I really am pleased that often students will come back to me years later and they will say, well, the fact that I was willing to sit down and talk to them about whatever it was, whether it was school-related or whether it was personal, it was important to them. And I will get email back saying, I finally went to grad school like you told me to 6 years ago or 4 years ago. So I think that I'm doing a good bit in that role, serving as mentor to my students as they go through.
And you have mentioned this, that there have been challenges in your life. Are there any particular challenges that that you didn't mention that you would like to mention?
Well, the one I think that and maybe I would mention that is that because I did something that maybe other people can do to help them. When I was at Tech, I think I mentioned that I felt a little bit out of place. And one of the things that Tech did was they had a support group for the women students, for women graduate students. And I used to go to that sometime. And that was really good because it helped me to see that other people were having, they're not the same issues, similar kinds of issues. Like the mechanical engineering PhD student who had her bachelor's and master's from Tech and had worked in industry and come back, and her fellow teaching assistant offered to show her how to compute an average because he thought she was going to have trouble. This is a woman with a master's from Tech, an engineering master's. So it made me see that women were regarded a certain way. It wasn't just the computer science department. It was sort of the feeling of the sciences and the engineering school, and it wasn't personal. And sometimes when you know things aren't personal, it's easier for you to handle. And what I gained from that is that if you're in that kind of situation, you should seek a support system, whether or not it's at school. When my daughter went to MIT, she had some similar issues, and she actually found a church home and then revived the Black Graduate Student Organization because I told her I had helped establish one at Tech when I was there. So she revived the one at MIT and became president and found that as a support system. So I think that what I found out is with the challenges is don't sit there and suffer by yourself. You know, reach out for whatever support, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's a group, whether it's a church, whether it's an organization. Get involved.
Were there any compromises that you had to make in going through your career?
Well, I guess in the sense that I did a lot of my compromises before I got into the career. When I did things like not go to graduate school because my ex was ready to move to another city, and not go to work right away full time because he didn't really want me to work. After that, it was more a priority balancing kind of compromise. You know, maybe I have to give up. I guess what I did do is, after I was divorced and moved back to Georgia, didn't do much dating or anything like that because between the children and the job and the school, there didn't seem to be any time. So I guess that's one compromise I made. I had to choose what was important and what I had time to do.
Do you have any other outside interests that would help us understand you any better?
Oh, well, I guess the four things I spend time on. So I do have things I do. I love to read, and I read omnivorously. Romances, science fiction, mystery, popular novels, nonfiction. If it's between covers, I'll probably try it. I may not finish it, but I'll probably try it. I like quilting, and that's something I used to do back when I was being a full-time homemaker, and then I picked back up lately. And I belong to a quilting group that we have an annual show, and people come in and admire our work, so that's kind of fun. I love to travel, and those who know me know they may find me anywhere. And I've combined my interest in computer science with that, so if I go to conferences, but I also enjoy where I go. I always make an afternoon or a day, just explore the city if it's just a couple of hours. So I learn a new place while I'm doing it. And I have my grandchildren.
was going to say, aren't you
My
going to talk about that
grandchildren.
other interest?
I have my grandchildren, and they take up a lot of my time. I have 2 granddaughters. They're 6 and 11, Alexandra and Avery, and they keep me very busy. The older one, Alexandra, is firmly trying to manage me now. She'll explain to me how, Nana, you were gone too long the last time. It's okay if you're gone for this long, but if you're going to be gone any longer than that, I need to go. So she'll explain it to me very carefully. But they spend, my daughter works at night, and she's in school now. So they spend several nights a week at my house. So I'm doing my second round of, did you lay out your uniform, wear your socks? Did you finish your homework, put your book bag in the car? And sometimes it wears me out, but I think it keeps me young too. So I really enjoy them. They're a lot of fun, and I'm instructed that I'm not to leave Spelman until my older granddaughter gets there. So I see that I'm not going to be able to retire this year.
Well, we're about to wrap up, and get a couple questions here. But if you could give advice to a young woman starting out, what would it be?
If I could give advice, I would advise that you not limit your choices, that you consider all kinds of possibilities, and that if something gets hard, that you look around to see how can you succeed. Don't just give up, but look around and see what do you need to do differently so you can succeed. And I would advise them to pick something they like to do. If you're going to be doing something all day long for 30 or 40 years, you want to enjoy it. So not by prestige, not by pay, but by what you can enjoy and get pleasure from doing.
If you could change one decision you made along your career path, what would it be?
If I could change one decision, I think I would have chosen to be more actively involved in research immediately after my PhD. I did realize at the time that if you let your research kind of lapse, it's hard to get back into it. So when I came back into it, I've never been able to get back to the depth that I would have liked to get to. I've been able to do some things, have some publications, but I haven't been able to do as much as I would have done if I had known that it was important to keep publishing, to keep working.
And if there's one story you want to tell so that it would be remembered, do you have that one story?
Do I have one story? I think I do have one story. And that one story is that when I got ready to go back to graduate school, I wasn't sure if I could do it. It had been a long time since I had done serious science or serious mathematics. And I talked to some people, and one in particular was very encouraging. They said, well, I think you could do it. My family was supportive. My mom was supportive. And I think that my dad was supportive. He helped me out financially when I couldn't do it. And I think the story I would tell is that there's ways to do things, that if you just have to keep looking around to find the ways to do it. And that you don't know what your path is going to be. I never thought when I said I was going to go get my master's at Atlanta University that I was going to end up getting a PhD and trying to inspire other people to go get a PhD. But that there's opportunities out there if you just keep your eyes open. So I think that's my story.
Well,
just keep them open.
Well, good. Well, thank you, Andrea. This has been fun for me. And I'm really happy that you've decided to spend this time giving your story.
I was glad to do it.